In the middle of a hot summer afternoon in 1954, Mayme Johnson was stepping out of a market on 110th Street when a man named Rico the Hammer Rossi blocked her path. Rico was a 30-year-old muscle for a rival mob, and he had spent the last month trying to bully shop owners into paying him for safety. Rico looked at Mayme and spoke loudly so the neighbors could hear. He told her to let her husband know that this part of town didn't belong to him anymore. He said the big bosses were taking over now. Mayme didn't say a word. She just tried to walk past him. Rico grabbed her by the shoulder. When Mayme told him to get his hands off her, Rico did something that would ruin his life. He slapped her across the face. The sound of the hit was so sharp, it made everyone on the sidewalk stop dead. Mayme stood there for a moment, her cheek turning red and her groceries scattered on the ground. She didn't look scared. She looked at Rico with pity. After being married to Bumpy Johnson for nearly 20 years, she knew exactly what this meant for the man standing in front of her. Rico thought he was being a tough guy, but he had no idea he had just signed his own death warrant. Bumpy heard about the slap only 10 minutes later. He was in his back office when his right-hand man, Slim, walked in without knocking. Slim told him that a guy named Rico had put his hands on Mayme in public. Bumpy didn't yell or flip a table. He just sat still. He asked if Mayme was okay, and Slim told him she was home safe, but that everyone saw what happened. Bumpy stared out his window at the streets of Harlem, thinking about the people who trusted him to keep them safe. He told Slim to find out every single thing about Rico Rossi, where he lived, who he loved, and what he cared about. By that evening, Bumpy had a file on Rico. He knew Rico lived in a nice house in the suburbs with a wife and 2 young kids. He knew Rico visited his elderly mother every weekend. He also knew Rico was a low-level worker who was desperate to impress his bosses. Rico was trying to be a big shot, and that made him sloppy. But Bumpy didn't reach for a gun. Instead, he spent the next few hours making strange phone calls. He called a professional photographer, a high-end printer, and a jewelry maker. He gave them all very specific jobs. Bumpy knew that while a bullet hurts for a second, knowing you are being watched hurts forever. For the next 3 days, Bumpy had people follow Rico's family everywhere. A photographer took pictures of Rico's mother at her favorite park. Another person followed his wife to the beauty parlor. They even took pictures of his children walking into their elementary school, showing the exact path they took every morning. Bumpy took all these photos and put them into a very expensive, beautiful leather book. It looked like a family photo album you would keep on a coffee table. When Bumpy looked through it, he saw exactly what he wanted, a clear map of Rico's heart. He wanted Rico to realize that while he was busy acting tough in Harlem, Bumpy was already standing right next to everything Rico loved. The album proved that Rico's entire world stayed safe only because Bumpy allowed it to. 4 days after the slap, on a bright June morning, Rico the Hammer Rossi was eating pancakes with his family when a loud knock came at the door. It was early, only 7:30 a.m., but Rico didn't think twice about it. He told his wife to stay at the table and went to see who it was. A delivery man was standing there with a brown paper parcel. After Rico signed for it, he took the box into his private office to see what was inside. He found a beautiful leather book. When he flipped to the first page, his heart nearly stopped. The first photo was of his mother walking home from the park. It was a clear, professional shot. The next page showed his wife and kids at the local market. Another page showed his children's school with a note at the bottom. 8:15 a.m., the exact time he dropped them off every single morning. Rico kept turning pages, his hands starting to tremble. Every person he loved was in that book. There were photos of his son at soccer practice, his daughter at her dance class, and even the house where his family went for dinner every Sunday. Someone had been following them, watching their every move, and he had never noticed. On the very last page, there wasn't a photo. Instead, there was a short note written in neat, fancy handwriting. "You hit my wife where everyone could see. I could touch everyone you love where no one can see. But I won't, because I am not like you. This is your only warning. Get out of Harlem today and stay out. If I ever see your face in my neighborhood again, this book won't be a warning anymore. It will be a map for my men. There was no name at the bottom, but Rico didn't need one. He realized that Bumpy Johnson wasn't just threatening him. He was showing him that he already had the power to take everything Rico cared about. Bumpy had chosen to be merciful, and that was more terrifying than a bullet. Rico's hand shook so hard he dropped the book on the floor. He stood there for several minutes, thinking about how easy it would have been for his family to disappear. He immediately called his boss, a powerful man named Sal the Vulture Moretti. "I'm done," Rico told him. "I'm leaving Harlem and I'm never going back." "What are you talking about?" Sal asked, confused. "Get down to the club right now." By 11 a.m., Rico was sitting across from Sal in a dark social club downtown. He slid the leather album across the table. "Look at this," Rico said quietly. Sal opened the book and began flipping through the pages, his face turning pale as he realized exactly what Bumpy Johnson was capable of. When Sal reached the message at the end, he shut the book and stared at Rico. "Bumpy Johnson sent this, didn't he?" "Who else could it be?" Rico asked, his voice cracking. "When did it arrive?" "This morning. Just 4 days after I—" Rico stopped, unable to finish. "After you hit his wife," Sal finished for him in a low, dangerous voice. "I didn't realize who she was," Rico stammered. "I was just trying to show them who's boss." "You weren't being a boss. You were being a fool," Sal snapped, pushing the album back toward him. "You laid hands on a man's wife in broad daylight without having a clue who you were messing with. This isn't just a threat, Rico. It's a show of power. He's telling you that he could have taken out your mom, your wife, and your kids at any second over the last 4 days. He chose to let them live to give you a way out." "So what's my move?" Rico asked. Sal leaned in close. "You do exactly what the note says. You get out of Harlem today, and you stay out forever." "And if I stay?" Sal looked at Rico with genuine pity. "Then every person in those pictures is fair game. Bumpy Johnson doesn't bluff. This isn't about being scared. It's about realizing you stepped over a line that should never be crossed. He's giving you one shot to fix it." Rico walked out of the club at 11:30 a.m. By 2 p.m., he had visited every shopkeeper had been bullying and told them he was done. By 5 p.m., he was back home, telling his wife they had to be much more careful from now on. He never stepped foot in Harlem again. However, the story didn't end with Rico running away. Over the next week, that leather photo album was passed up the chain of command in the rival mob. Sal showed it to his captains, who eventually showed it to the top bosses of the city's 5 major crime families during a secret meeting. The reaction wasn't what Rico might have hoped for. The big bosses weren't mad at Bumpy Johnson. They were furious at Rico. Bumpy had played them perfectly. By sending a warning instead of a hit squad, and by showing mercy instead of starting a war, he had trapped the families. If the families attacked Bumpy for threatening Rico, they would look like they were defending a man who hits women in public, which was bad for business and bad for their reputation. If they did nothing, they were admitting that Bumpy had set a boundary they couldn't cross. Either way, Bumpy was the winner. Within 2 weeks, the high-ranking mob bosses issued a new rule. No one was to move into Harlem without permission from the very top.